The cold air of Staten Island carried more than winter that night, it carried judgment. Sonny Black Napolitano, one of the most feared men in the Bonanno family, walked into a quiet suburban house knowing exactly what waited for him in the basement below. No panic. No confusion. Just the heavy truth of a man who followed the Mafia code and was about to die by it. But this isn't just the story of a mob boss walking to his execution. It's the story of the undercover agent who fooled an entire crime family for 6 years. A man they trusted. A man they welcomed. A man who nearly became one of them. And it's the story of how that trust, broken in the most devastating way, didn't just kill Sonny Black. It detonated the beginning of the end for the Bonanno empire. This is the betrayal that shook the Mafia world to its core, and the chain reaction that destroyed the last dawn. The night air over Staten Island hangs heavy, thick with winter frost and something darker, an unspoken dread clinging to every shadow. The houses lining the quiet block sleep peacefully, unaware that one of the most feared men in New York's criminal world is taking his final walk. Sonny Black Napolitano steps out of the car without a word, his breath drifting upward in pale clouds. He doesn't look confused. He doesn't look surprised. He looks resolved. This is not a man being tricked or dragged to his fate. This is a man who understands exactly what loyalty demands and what happens when it breaks. The house they bring him to looks ordinary, painfully ordinary. A family home in the suburbs, its curtains drawn, its yard quiet. But inside, it is no home tonight. It is a death chamber dressed in drywall and silence. Sonny steps through the door. No one meets his eyes. No one needs to. His footsteps echo across the tile, down a narrow hallway, and toward a door left slightly open, an invitation, a sentence, a goodbye. He descends the wooden steps into the basement. A single bulb hangs from the ceiling, swaying gently, as if disturbed by the weight of fate entering the room. Its pale, sickly light washes over concrete walls and bare floors. No furniture. No chairs. No tools. No theatrics. The Mafia doesn't need props for death. Only decisions. Sonny stops at the bottom of the stairs. He listens to the footsteps behind him, slow, deliberate, heavy. He doesn't turn around. He already knows. The air feels colder down here, colder than the winter outside. A stillness blankets everything, a silence so perfect it becomes suffocating. Sonny Black breathes it in, long and steady, like a man preparing for a plunge beneath icy water. For decades, he lived by the code. For years, he enforced it. And tonight, he will die by it. What haunts him is not death. What haunts him is the reason. The Bonanno family, his family, has suffered the greatest humiliation in modern Mafia history. Not from a rival. Not from a mutiny. Not from betrayal inside the ranks. But from a stranger wearing cheap shoes, stolen jewelry, and a smile that hid federal steel beneath it. Donnie Brasco. Sonny had brought him in. He had vouched for him. He had trusted him. He had taken him under his wing. And the man, no, the agent, had eaten at his table, laughed at his jokes, walked the streets with him, and watched him navigate life and death decisions every day. 6 years. 6 long years of secrets, meetings, deals, and blood. 6 years of loyalty. And every second had been a lie. The door at the top of the stairs closes with a soft click. Sonny hears it, and for the first time his eyes shift upward. Not in fear, never in fear, but in acknowledgement. The ritual has begun. The men who stand behind him are not his enemies. In another life, they were brothers. But the code rules all, and the code has already decided. There is no courtroom for men like Sonny Black. No appeals. No mercy. Only consequence. He takes a small step forward, positioning himself directly beneath the hanging bulb. The light casts his shadow long across the concrete, stretching it thin like a final echo of his life. His hands remain at his sides.
Calm. Steady.
Someone coughs behind him. The metallic sound of a weapon being unholstered floats into the air. Sonny finally speaks, his voice low and even, the voice of a man asking a simple favor before the world closes on him. If you're gonna do it, make it good. No anger. No bitterness. No apology. Just acceptance. Because he knows that the fault, at least in the Mafia's eyes, is his. He let Donnie Brasco in. He let the FBI into the bloodstream of the Bonanno family. He let a federal agent get close enough to infect the entire empire with truth. He didn't betray the family, but he failed it. And in the Cosa Nostra, failure is a sin just as unforgivable. A pair of footsteps moves closer behind him. The tension in the air tightens like piano wire. Sonny closes his eyes, not out of fear, but out of clarity. In that suspended moment, memories rush through him. Nights in smoky backrooms, envelopes passing hands, the thrill of surviving another raid, another deal, another street war. And among those memories is Donnie's face, laughing, drinking, talking like a brother. How could he have known? How could anyone? But knowing doesn't matter now. The code doesn't care about explanations, only outcomes. Behind him, the gun rises. This is the moment where men panic, where they beg, where they deny, bargain, collapse. Sonny Black does none of these things. He straightens his posture. He lifts his chin slightly. He waits. And in that stillness, the basement becomes a church of final truths. For the Bonanno family, this execution is not about punishment. It's about erasing a weakness, sending a message, closing a wound the FBI tore open, restoring order through the oldest mafia tradition, blood for blood. The betrayal of Donnie Brasco is more than a scandal. It is a spiritual violation, a tearing apart of trust that had survived generations. And tonight, Sonny Black is the offering. The men behind him breathe in. The trigger prepares to snap. The empire prepares to cleanse itself. What Sonny doesn't know, what no one knows yet, is that this single death will not stop the bleeding.
It will not restore the family.
It will not undo the infiltration. It will only ignite the beginning of the end. Because Donnie Brasco wasn't just a spy. He was a seed, a fuse, a quiet storm planted deep inside the Mafia's heart. And Sonny Black's final moment, his silent contract with destiny, is the spark that will unleash a chain reaction the underworld will never recover from. The basement light flickers. The cold air thickens. And history, merciless and waiting, leans in. Welcome my beautiful family and friends to my YouTube channel. Please click on subscribe, like, comment, and share this video. Thank you specially for sticking around to this very moment. Now back to the story. They called him Donnie Brasco. A nobody, a hustler, a jewel thief scraping by on the crumbs of the New York underworld. That was the mask. Behind the cheap leather jacket, behind the Brooklyn accent roughened by cigarette smoke, behind the swagger of a man who always seemed one deal away from disaster, stood someone far more dangerous. FBI's Special Agent Joseph Pistone. A ghost with a badge. A phantom trained to slip into the cracks of criminal empires and vanish inside them. But no one in the Bonanno family knew that. Not in the bars, not in the back rooms, not in the dimly lit social clubs where secrets whispered themselves into history. To them, Donnie was real. A fellow struggler trying to hustle diamonds and stolen goods. A man with ambition. A man who knew how to keep his mouth shut. And above all, a man with loyalty. It began small, as ghosts always do. A conversation in a cafe. A handshake outside a bar. A quiet job here and there, testing his nerves, measuring his silence. And Donnie passed every test.
He didn't brag.
He didn't flaunt. He didn't reach too high. He simply existed, calm, present, dependable. The Mafia was a fortress, built on paranoia and pride. Men with instincts as sharp as knives guarded its doors. They could sniff out fear, weakness, or deceit with a single glance. But Donnie Brasco walked through their defenses like smoke slipping under a door. He blended into their world with terrifying ease. He learned their codes, copied their mannerisms, absorbed their rhythms until he felt less like a newcomer and more like a long-lost cousin returning home. His greatest weapon was not his gun. It was his patience. For 6 years, 6 long, extraordinary, dangerous years, he lived not as Joseph Pistone, husband and father, but as Donnie Brasco, street-level thief. Every morning, he woke up in a life that could kill him before lunch. Every night, he went to sleep wondering if tomorrow he'd still be himself, or a corpse in a barrel dumped off the Brooklyn docks. No one survives that long inside the mafia unless they're truly accepted. And Donnie was not just accepted, he was welcomed by the very men who would later die because of him. Among them was Sonny Black Napolitano. To most of the world, Sonny was a name whispered in fear. To his men, he was a captain, the kind of leader who demanded respect without raising his voice. But to Donnie Brasco, he was something else. A gatekeeper to the inner sanctum. At first, Sonny watched Donnie from a distance. A thief is a thief, and thieves are plentiful. He had no reason to care about this lean new face hanging around the bars. But Donnie had something different, something Sonny could feel even if he couldn't explain it. A steadiness. A discipline. A loyalty that felt genuine. He didn't push for big scores. He didn't ask questions.
He didn't complain. He watched. He listened.
He showed up. And slowly, imperceptibly, he worked his way into Sonny's trust. Trust is the rarest currency in the mob. You can't steal it. You can't fake it. You earn it inch by inch over months and years. Donnie earned it with the quiet persistence of a shadow that refuses to leave. Sonny began inviting him to more meetings, more errands, more conversations that tiptoed closer and closer to the inner workings of the Bonanno family. And Donnie Pistone never faltered. He sat at their tables. He drank their wine. He laughed at their jokes. He passed envelopes. He drove cars. He watched Sonny make decisions that shaped the streets of New York. He was there for the good days and the grim ones. He saw men rise and fall, fortunes shift, tempers flare, and secrets spill. And through it all, no one sensed the truth. Not once. But there is a moment, an invisible line in every undercover operation, where the role stops being an act and begins becoming a life. Donnie Brasco crossed that line when Sonny Black did something no one could have predicted. He recommended Donnie to be made induction into the Mafia, the highest honor a boss could grant, a sacred rite sealed with blood and fire, marking a man as untouchable, eternal, one of them. For Donnie Brasco, a federal agent, it was unthinkable. Yet there he was, standing on the edge of the most forbidden threshold in American organized crime. To be proposed meant total acceptance, full trust, a belief that he was loyal not only to Sonny, but to the entire Bonanno family. It meant the Mafia was ready to shed blood in his name if anything ever happened to him. It meant he was family. And that single gesture, that single moment of belief, became the Bonanno family's greatest sin. Not because Sonny trusted the wrong man, but because he trusted the perfect wrong man. The Mafia had always feared betrayal from within, rats, traitors, greedy soldiers looking for immunity. They expected betrayal from cowards or rivals. They never imagined betrayal could come dressed as friendship, as confidence, as loyalty, as Donnie Brasco. Sonny Black wasn't fooled. No, he was human. He saw in Donnie a reflection of loyalty he believed he understood. But loyalty is the most dangerous illusion in the underworld. It blinds. It binds. It kills. And Donnie Brasco, Joseph Pistone, was the ghost that walked among them unnoticed, untouched, and unquestioned. A ghost who carried a badge in a pocket no one ever searched. A ghost who listened, reported, recorded, and remembered. A ghost who would one day bring an entire Mafia family to its knees. But in this moment, in this chapter, no one sees it coming. Not Sonny Black. Not the Bonannos. Not even Pistone himself. This is the calm before the storm. The deception before the carnage. The shadow before the collapse. Because the moment Sonny spoke Donnie Brasco's name as a future-made man, the fate of the Bonanno family was sealed. The truth doesn't whisper its way into the Mafia world. It explodes. When the FBI finally reveals who Donnie Brasco really is, the underworld doesn't just tremble, it stops breathing. For a moment, the entire Cosa Nostra seems frozen in shock, as if time itself refuses to move until someone explains how a federal agent lived among them for 6 years, watched their rituals, learned their codes, and almost became one of them. Inside a dim corner office, surrounded by shadows and smoke, Joe Massino stands alone, a glass of red wine untouched in his hand, his jaw tightening as the story unfolds. Massino, boss of the Bonanno family, a man who survived wars, betrayals, and federal heat, feels something he hasn't felt in decades. The floor shifting beneath him. One man, one friendship, one blind trust. That's all it took for his empire, an empire built on silence and loyalty, to begin leaking secrets like a dying ship in open water. The indictments come like a rainstorm, each one striking with the force of a hammer. Racketeering, extortion,
Gambling.
loan sharking, narcotics trafficking. 50 indictments in total, a number so staggering it sends shockwaves through every borough, every crew, every capo who ever believed the Bonannos were untouchable. The other families watch with dread. If the Bonannos could fall to an undercover agent, an outsider they treated like blood, then anyone could be next. No one is safe. No one is immune. No one is above suspicion. The old mafia wisdom, trust only those who share your blood, suddenly feels like a cruel joke. Because it wasn't betrayal from a cousin or a capo that brought the Bonannos to their knees. It was the sincerity Sonny Black saw in a stranger's eyes. And the commission, the mafia's ruling council, is not a forgiving body. The meeting is brief, cold, merciless. The heads of the other 4 families gather, their faces carved from stone, their voices low with fury. The Bonanno family has made them look weak, stupid, exposed. How do you explain that a federal agent sat in their meetings, touched their money, handled their business, and almost got sworn in as a made man? There is no explanation. There is only punishment. The commission banishes the Bonannos. They are cut off from shared rackets, from unions, from gambling rings, from construction deals, from every money pipe that kept the mafia alive. They become outcasts. A stain. Radioactive. No family wants to be seen with them. No consigliera wants to advise them. No capo wants to trade with them. A mafia family, without allies, is not a family. It is a corpse waiting to be buried. On the streets, whispers turn to panic. Old loyalties crack. Eyes sharpen with suspicion. Who else talked? Who else was fooled? Who else brought Donnie into a room where only blood should have been allowed? Fear grows like mold in every basement meeting, in every parked car conversation, in every dim-lit bar where men sit too close and speak too softly. A brother looks at a brother and wonders if he is next. A soldier avoids the captain's stare, fearing it may be the last thing he sees before a gun goes off. Even the toughest men, men who survived gunfights, men who spent nights waiting for ambushes, men who buried their friends, feel something new. Uncertainty. If an agent could walk past their instincts undetected, what else could slip past? What else is already inside? Back at the FBI office, agents erupt in celebration. They cheer. They clap each other's backs. They raise cardboard cups of stale coffee, like champagne flutes at a victory party. They have done the impossible. They infiltrated a mafia family so deeply, so intimately, that it practically tore itself apart. To them, it is a triumph of patience, courage, strategy. To the mafia, it is a wound that will never heal. But while the rest of the underworld stumbles under the weight of humiliation, Joe Massino does something no one expects. He stays quiet, deadly quiet. He does not rage. He does not cry out for blood. He does not lash out blindly, executing men in a desperate attempt to erase the shame. Instead, he watches. He listens. He thinks. Because Joe Massino is no ordinary boss. He did not rise to power by chance. He is patient. He is calculating. He is cold. He knows that every empire falls, but some rise again. And as he sits in the back of a darkened restaurant, his men whispering nervously around him, Massino simply taps his fingers against the table and lets the room drown in silence. The commission has banished them. The FBI has humiliated them. The streets mock them. But Joe Massino sees something in the wreckage that no one else sees. An opportunity. The family may be broken, but the pieces still belong to him. And if there is one thing more dangerous than a mafia boss with power, it is a mafia boss with nothing left to lose. Massino lifts his glass, finally taking a sip of the wine he ignored earlier. It tastes bitter, metallic, like a promise whispered to the dark. He isn't finished. Not yet. Not even close. Because a wounded animal does not retreat. A wounded animal learns to hunt differently. And Joe Massino, last on, survivor, strategist, is ready to rebuild his kingdom. Piece by piece, deal by deal, body by body. Prison has a way of breaking men. It strips them of power, dignity, identity. It turns mob bosses into ghosts, into whispers, into memories fading behind steel bars. But Joe Massino is not most men. Behind the concrete walls and razor wire, while guards patrol with bored eyes and inmates shuffle through routines like cattle, Massino sits quietly in his cell, thinking, calculating, reshaping the world in his mind. Where others see confinement, he sees an opportunity, a pause, a reset, a chance to rebuild what the Donnie Brasco scandal shattered. The other families laugh at his downfall. The commission exiles the Bonannos. The FBI believes the family is crippled beyond repair. But in the stillness of a prison night, Joe Massino begins writing the blueprint for his return and for the rebirth of an empire. There's only one man he trusts enough to bring this plan to life. Salvatore Sal Vitali. His brother-in-law. His childhood companion. His right hand. A man whose loyalty is stitched into the fabric of Massino's life. Sal becomes more than just a capo. He becomes Massino's voice on the street, his eyes, his ears, his messenger, his mirror. The one man allowed to visit him. The only one trusted to carry orders from behind bars into the world beyond them. Visits that look harmless on the surface, family catching up, brothers-in-law talking about life, are in truth secret board meetings of a criminal corporation. Every handshake in the visiting room masks a transfer of power. Every murmured conversation plants the seeds of a new reign. Every glance between them speaks a language only they understand. Sal listens. Massino instructs. And outside those prison walls, the Bonanno family slowly, quietly begins to breathe again. The old world is dead. The commission is shattered. Bosses from the other families, Colombo, Lucchese, Gambino, Genovese, are either locked away or scrambling to survive the government's prosecutions. The Mafia's golden age is ending. But in chaos lies opportunity. Sal Vitali moves through New York with precision. No noise. No bragging. No flashy hits. No meetings in the traditional social clubs that law enforcement surveils. The new Bonanno family has no headquarters. No daily gatherings. No exposed patterns. Instead, they operate like shadows moving in the cracks between streetlights. No social clubs. No phones. No mistakes. Massino's commandments. Because the old mafia failed by being predictable. By staying loyal to traditions the FBI had already mapped out. By trusting routines the government could infiltrate and dismantle. Massino refuses to be predictable. He refuses to be visible. He refuses to be the next boss taken down by a wiretap or a bug hidden in a ceiling fan. He will build a mafia that cannot be infiltrated. A secret society behind a secret society. And Sal executes that vision flawlessly. They return to old rackets, but smarter. Tighter. More insulated. Loan sharking. Extortion. Gambling. But they also expand into darker, more lucrative ventures. Hard drugs. Heroin. Cocaine. Business moves fast. Cash flows faster. The streets whisper that the Bonannos are alive again, that their exile from the commission has forced them to evolve instead of die. But the FBI? They see nothing. Their attention is glued to the other four families, who are falling apart under prosecution. Bonanno activity is so quiet, so disciplined, so ghost-like, that federal agents begin to believe the family really did collapse. Their squads shrink. Budgets move elsewhere. Informants dry up. By the time anyone considers looking in Massino's direction, the family he supposedly destroyed has become one of the most stable, profitable, and loyal criminal organizations in the city. Massino doesn't just rebuild the Bonannos. He reinvents them. Every rule is sharpened. Every soldier is monitored. Every captain knows that betrayal means immediate, silent erasure. And through all this, one truth becomes clear. Joe Massino has evolved from a street boss into a strategist, a king, a man whose power is no longer loud or violent but cold, controlled, and absolute. By the mid-1990s, the mafia landscape has changed. Courtrooms replace social clubs. Juries replace soldiers. Federal agents replace rival hitmen as the most feared enemy. Boss after boss falls.
John Gotti, gone.
The commission gone. Lucchese leadership fractured. Colombo family chaotic. Genovese empire riddled with indictments. It is a massacre of dynasties. And in the ashes of once untouchable empires, one man walks untouched. Joe Massino. The prison bars open. He steps out. And what he finds waiting for him is more than a family. It is a kingdom rebuilt in his absence. A mafia reborn under his rules, shaped by his mind, and held together by a loyalty so fierce and fearful that no one dares question it. The FBI barely notices at first. They believe Massino is a relic, an aging boss returning to a world that's moved on. But the streets know better. Whispers rise in restaurants, back alleys, union halls, and illegal gambling dens. Massino's back. Massino's in charge again. Massino's family is stronger than ever. And those whispers soon turn into a single, chilling title, spoken with equal parts respect and fear. The Last Don. The last king of an era fading into dust. The last boss strong enough, smart enough, disciplined enough to survive the government's war on the mafia. He is the final remnant of old-school Cosa Nostra. The last man standing. And the most dangerous Don in America. The FBI's war room feels colder these days. Not because of the air conditioning, but because every agent in it knows they're hunting a man who doesn't leave footprints. Jack Steubing stands at the front of the room, staring at a wall of photographs, grainy surveillance shots of Joe Massino stepping out of cars, walking into storefronts, nodding quietly at associates. Each photo looks the same. Massino's broad frame, his calm eyes, his lips barely visible behind his hand as he speaks. A ghost wrapped in flesh. Steubing rubs his temples. He's been in the bureau long enough to read men. But Massino? Massino is unreadable. The boss of the Bonanno family moves like a shadow slipping through a half-lit alley. He smiles without smiling, speaks without speaking, commands without ever appearing to give an order. And the worst part? He's getting stronger. Massino's empire is expanding quietly but steadily. His captains run rackets with precision. His soldiers obey without question. His lieutenants know exactly what to say and what never to say. Meanwhile, the FBI watches from the outside, always watching, yet never seeing. Steubing sends undercover agents. They get nowhere. He puts wiretaps in homes. Silence. He plants bugs in cars. Nothing but the hum of engines. Massino's paranoia is legendary. He knows every surveillance trick the FBI has. Every angle, every weakness, every blind spot. He has studied them the way some men study scripture. On phone calls, he says almost nothing. When is the thing? Talk to him. You know. Conversations so vague, even the best analysts can't decode them. When he meets his people, it is always outside. Always walking. Always moving. He shields his mouth with his hand, a casual gesture that drives lip readers crazy. He stops mid-sentence when cars roll by. He changes direction when someone lingers too long. He never sits near windows. Never meets on predictable schedules. Never leaves a trail. He memorizes agents' faces, cars, license plates. Twice, Steubing had changed entire surveillance teams, only for Massino to spot the new ones just as fast. It feels like trying to catch fog with bare hands. Steubing knows something dangerous. Massino isn't just avoiding us, he says to his team. He's studying us. And that is what keeps Steubing awake at night. A boss who knew how to hide? That was normal. But a boss who knew how they hunted? That was a nightmare. Every time the FBI thinks they've caught a break, the trail goes cold. A meeting happens in a back alley with no cameras. A cash drop gets moved 5 minutes before the agents arrive. A suspect they're tailing suddenly ducks into a crowd and disappears. Steubing begins to feel something he hasn't felt in years. Pressure. Not the pressure of chasing a criminal, but the pressure of chasing someone who is always one move ahead. And beneath that pressure simmers something darker.
Fear.
Because the longer they chase Massino, the more Steubing realizes the truth. We're in his world. He's not in ours. FBI meetings grow tense. Agents swap stories about how Massino spotted them from ridiculous distances, once from the window of a bakery, once from a passing cab, once from inside a parked car with tinted windows. The Bureau pores over footage, over photos, over transcripts. Nothing. They are chasing a shadow that knows it is being chased. Steubing feels trapped inside a maze where every turn leads to another dead end. Massino's genius isn't violence or charisma. It's invisibility. He commits no crimes personally. He orders nothing on the phone. He signs nothing. He touches no money. His empire is built on distance, and distance is the FBI's worst enemy. Steubing grows more frustrated by the day. What are we missing? He growls during late-night briefings. Where does he slip? Where does he breathe? Where does he exist? No one has an answer. Meanwhile, Massino sleeps soundly. His paranoia keeps him alive. His intelligence keeps his enemies blind. And his soldiers, fearful and loyal, keep his hands clean. He knows the FBI is coming. He knows they always come. But he also knows something the Bureau hasn't yet realized. You don't beat the FBI by outrunning them, Massino tells a trusted lieutenant. You beat them by removing the ground beneath their feet. To Massino, surveillance is not a threat, it's a game. And he plays it like a patient predator, waiting for the moment the hunters grow tired. Steubing is tired. The Bureau tries new tactics. New undercover contacts. New informants. New attempts to plant ears inside Massino's operations. Every attempt fails. You're hunting a man who hasn't made a mistake in 20 years, one agent mutters. And Steubing knows it's true. Massino's empire grows quietly, untouchable, invisible, disciplined. The pressure on the FBI mounts. Supervisors demand progress. Politicians want results. The media wants a story. But the truth is simple. Jack Steubing is hunting a phantom. A phantom who knows where every camera sits. A phantom who avoids every bug. A phantom who feels the air shift when someone watches him. A phantom who slips through their fingers, again and again, as if he can smell surveillance before the agents even park their cars. Steubing's frustration builds into something sharper, dangerous, urgent, personal. He wants Massino. But wanting is useless. To catch a ghost, the FBI needs something more powerful than surveillance. They need leverage. They need a weakness Massino won't see coming. A vulnerability no street soldier could protect. A flaw in the armor of a man who never speaks, never slips, never leaves a trail. Steubing stares at a stack of financial documents on his desk. Pay stubs.
Receipts.
Property records. Bank statements. Corporate filings. Massino doesn't make mistakes, an agent says. Steubing shakes his head. Everyone makes mistakes, he whispers, but smart men hide them in numbers. And finally, after years of chasing shadows, years of frustration, years of losing, Jack Steubing sees a crack. A crack big enough to break an empire. We're done chasing his footsteps, Steubing says, standing tall. We hit him where he can't hide. His voice drops to a whisper, heavy with the weight of a new war. His money. Every empire has a crack, a quiet fracture that begins small, almost invisible, until one day it splits the entire foundation in two. For Joe Massino, that crack has a name. Salvatore Sal Vitali.
His brother-in-law.
His right hand. His trusted shadow. The man who rebuilt the Bonanno family with him, brick by brick, while Massino whispered orders from behind prison glass. If loyalty had a face, Massino had always believed it looked like Sal Vitale. But loyalty, as the Mafia learns again and again, is a fragile currency, and fear is stronger than blood. The FBI has been hunting Massino's weakness for years. Agents poured through financial records like monks studying ancient scriptures, searching for one number, one signature, one hidden pattern that might reveal how a ghost feeds his empire. And then, deep in the labyrinth of receipts and banking logs, they find it. A bank in Long Island. A bank Sal Vitale has quietly transformed into his personal empire. Money laundered through accounts that should have been clean. Payments collected behind the counter. Debtors threatened in the back office. Gambling profits hidden under wings of legitimate business. It's not just a side hustle. It's a kingdom within the kingdom, and one that leads straight back to the Bonanno family's second-in-command. The FBI strikes fast. Vitale is indicted, along with 6 associates and the bank manager. Inside the bureau, the mood is electric. They've finally touched something Massino owns, something he needs, something he can't easily replace. But when the sentence comes down, it's light, suspiciously light, uncomfortably light. Agents stare at each other. Steubing feels a chill crawl up his spine. Why would a man at Vitale's level get so little time? Unless the whispers start before the ink dries on the sentencing papers. Inside steakhouse booths. Inside backroom card games. Inside dim garages where soldiers stand too close and talk too softly. What did Sal say? How did he walk so easily? Is he with the feds? Questions spread like poison. No soldier wants to believe it. No captain wants to consider it. No made man wants to say it aloud. Because Sal Vitale isn't just a boss. He is family. But blood runs thin when fear runs thick. Massino feels the shift immediately. It begins with a look, a too long stare from a soldier who never looks at him directly. Then a sudden silence when he enters a room. Conversations cut short. Eyes sliding away. Fear always smells the same. Sour, quiet, restless. Massino knows the scent too well. He has smothered it in others. He has punished it. He has buried it. Now it surrounds him. And it leads back to Sal. The weight in Massino's chest is heavier than anger. He is not a man known for emotion, not grief, not guilt, not hesitation. But betrayal? Betrayal is different. Betrayal is personal. How could Sal let this happen? How could he let the FBI get so close? How could he walk out so easily? The questions gnaw at him like teeth in the dark. He can't show doubt to his men. Doubt is weakness. Weakness invites rebellion. So, he does the only thing a mafia boss can do when loyalty becomes a question mark instead of an oath. He cuts Sal off, strips him of authority, takes his rackets, pulls back his influence, silences his voice. He shelves him, the mafia's version of exile. To the family, it is a message. If blood can fall, anyone can fall. To Sal, it is a warning. To Massino, it is heartbreak disguised as strategy. But shelving Sal is not enough. The air is thick with paranoia. And paranoia, once awakened, doesn't sleep. Massino begins cleaning house. Old murders resurface. Crimes buried in memory, buried in Canada, buried in whispers. Loose ends. Men who once served faithfully but now know too much, or look too nervous, or carry secrets that could destroy the family, start to disappear. Cars found abandoned. Phones ringing endlessly. Bodies never discovered. The Bonanno family becomes a storm of quiet, surgical violence. Paranoia becomes policy. Silence becomes survival. Fear becomes fuel. Massino's rule tightens like a rope around the throat of the entire organization. But fear, once unleashed, never obeys its master. Sal Vitale sits in the center of the storm, but he is no longer part of it. For the first time in his life, he feels like a man standing outside a house he helped build, watching the windows burn from the inside while the door locks behind him. He hears the rumors. He feels the eyes. He senses the danger. And he knows one truth. When a mafia boss suspects you, there is no such thing as forgiveness. Massino had trusted him more than anyone. Massino had let him run the family. Massino had let him become the architect of their rebirth. Now Massino treats him like a disease. And diseases get cured. Sal begins to feel the cold breath of death on the back of his neck. Every knock at the door. Every car following too closely. Every unfamiliar voice on the phone. The world grows darker, smaller, more suffocating. He knows what Massino is capable of. He knows what Massino does to anyone who threatens him. He knows that no one survives being shelved for long. And little by little, fear begins to outweigh loyalty. Fear begins to outweigh blood. Fear begins to outweigh silence. Sal Vitale, the man Joe Massino trusted above all others, is pushed into a corner with only two ways out: death or betrayal. And when a man fears for his life, when he feels abandoned, targeted, hunted, even the deepest loyalty becomes fragile. Even family becomes expendable. Even a brother-in-law becomes prey. The FBI doesn't even have to catch him. Massino's paranoia does that for them. And in that paranoia, in the decision to cut Sal loose, Joe Massino unknowingly seals his own fate. Because the greatest betrayal of his life is not something the FBI forces. It's something he creates. With his own hands. With his own fear. With his own power. The betrayal Massino never saw coming, the betrayal that will destroy his empire, is the betrayal of Sal Vitale. In the end, every mafia story comes down to one truth. Power always demands a price. For Joe Massino, that price arrives not as a bullet in the dark or a rival boss seeking vengeance, but as the one betrayal he never prepared for. A betrayal he created. A betrayal born from fear. A betrayal wrapped in blood. A betrayal with a familiar face. Salvatore Sal Vitale. His brother-in-law. His childhood friend. His closest confidant. The man who once walked beside him as they rebuilt an empire. Now that same man sits in a federal interrogation room, hands trembling, eyes hollow. The weight of impending death pressing down on him like concrete collapsing in slow motion. Vitale has reached the point where every mafia man breaks, when the walls close in, when the family disappears, when the nights stretch long and cold in a prison cell with no guarantee of tomorrow. He feels it in his bones. He feels it in the silence where his protectors should be. He feels it in the coldness of Massino's decision to shelve him, to cut him off, isolate him, erase him. For years, Vitale murdered for the family, collected for the family, protected the family. He carried out whispers of violence that stretched across borders, across decades, across the darkest corners of the Bonanno legacy. And now he sits alone, with nothing but ghosts and fear for company. The FBI doesn't need to threaten him. They don't need to break him. They don't even need to persuade him. Massino did that himself. Months of abandonment. Months of suspicion. Months of living one breath away from a bullet. Fear is a poison. And Massino fed it to him drop by drop. Until finally, the man who once held the Bonanno family together makes the choice no one ever imagined. He walks into the federal courtroom, raises his hand, takes an oath, and flips. At first, agents can't believe it. Sal Vitale, one of the most feared capos in New York, is now working for the government. Not just against a soldier. Not just against a rival crew. Not just against the family.
No.
Vitale goes after the one man no mafia member has ever dared to betray. The boss himself. The Godfather. Joe Massino. In the long, bloody history of American organized crime, bosses have been betrayed by traitors, by cowards, by ambitious captains, by desperate soldiers. But never in history has a mafia godfather been betrayed by his own family. Vitale becomes the first. The moment he reveals his testimony, the FBI feels the ground shift. They know what he holds in his memory. Murder counts, hidden rackets, secret meetings, execution orders, decades of blood. And most devastating of all, Massino's direct involvement in crimes he had spent his entire life shielding himself from. The last Don's armor, carefully forged through paranoia, discipline, silence, finally cracks. By the time Vitali finishes his first round of testimony, Massino's empire is already bleeding out. This is not Donnie Brasco infiltrating from the outside. This is betrayal detonating from within. When the news reaches Massino in prison, he doesn't yell. He doesn't curse. He doesn't slam a fist against the table.
He goes still, quiet, cold.
The guards would later say they'd never seen a man freeze so completely, as if someone had pressed pause on his entire soul. Sal Vitali, his brother-in-law, his second-in-command, the man he trusted above all others, the man he raised, the man he protected, the man he once called brother. It wasn't a soldier. It wasn't a captain. It wasn't some punk looking for immunity. It was family. The one thing Massino believed was unbreakable. He closes his eyes and whispers a truth more deadly than any gunshot. No family survives without loyalty. A truth he had enforced with blood. A truth he believed in more than power. A truth he discovered only when it was too late to save himself. Loyalty is the breath of the mafia. Without it, everything dies. And Massino? He suffocates in the realization that he lost not because of the FBI, not because of Donnie Brasco, not because of the commission, but because he broke the code before anyone else did. By cutting off Sal, he created the very betrayal he feared. The Bonanno dynasty doesn't fall with a shotgun blast or a street war or a rival's ambition. It ends in a courtroom, with a man in a suit pointing at the Don he once toasted at family dinners. By the time the sentencing is handed down, the legend is over. The last Don, the final king of the old mafia, does not die on the streets, does not vanish in a storm of bullets, does not go out as a myth. He is undone by a whisper, a confession, a signature on a cooperation agreement. The Bonanno dynasty crumbles. The legacy of fear dissolves. The empire built on silence is destroyed by a voice Massino never expected to hear. In the end, the most powerful mafia boss of his generation is not defeated by law enforcement, but by the secret betrayal of a mafia boss. And when the courtroom empties and the cameras shut off and the world moves on, a single question remains, echoing through every story of power and loyalty. If betrayal can come from family, then who can a king ever trust? Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and share this video. Click on the screen to watch the next one.